Welcome to today's explainer. Look, if you've ever stood in your garage, surrounded by half-finished projects, literally tripping over extension cords, maybe fighting off rogue spiders just to find a single basic screwdriver, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're taking a highly tactile, incredibly satisfying journey. We're going to break down the chronological transformation of a completely cluttered, neglected garage into a sleek, highly functional workspace. We're talking raw materials, clever low-cost hacks, and a whole lot of serious elbow grease.
But first, ask yourself a question that plagues almost every creator and builder out there. Why on earth does a 5-minute DIY job end up taking an hour? We all know the feeling, right? You walk in to do a super quick fix and suddenly, bam, you spend 45 minutes just hunting down the right drill bit or trying to clear off a tiny patch of bench space just to work on. It's a universal frustration, and it's born entirely out of a disorganized, chaotic workspace.
And man, it's a frustration shared by some seriously heavy-hitting builders. Motorcycle builder Aaron Colton put it perfectly when looking back at his old shop setup. He said, "I had a Sam's Club box mixed with a Craftsman box. Every 5-minute job always takes an hour." It's just so incredibly raw and real. When your tools are a mismatched jumble and the floor is an absolute mess, your workflow is completely broken. But hey, that is exactly what we're going to fix today. Okay, let's dive into this chronologically. We'll start with number 1, the blank canvas. Then move to 2, flooring and insulation basics. 3, clever power and lighting. 4, modular versus built-in storage. And finally, number 5, the final workshop setup. Section 1, the blank canvas. Look, every massive overhaul absolutely has to start at square one. You just can't build a dream shop on top of decades of accumulated junk. It's time to clear out the ancient cardboard boxes and sweep out those cobwebs. To really get this right, you gotta respect the sequence. First, you clear the clutter completely out of the space. Then, you lay a rock-solid foundation. Only then do you bring your space to life by running your power and light, which perfectly sets the stage for installing your organization systems. If you skip a step, well, you'll be tearing things down later to fix it, guaranteed. You really need to strip the space down to a bare-bone box, and honestly, this isn't always pretty. For Alex over at XX Workshop, this meant starting by replacing a completely leaking, basically unusable asbestos roof before he could even think about bringing tools inside. For Aaron Colton, it meant grinding down incredibly rough formwork on his concrete just to get a clean aesthetic edge. You're ripping off the Band-Aid here, so you have a totally clean slate. Section 2, flooring and insulation basics. Once you've got that clean box, we move to the foundation. And as the team at Hunting for George learned while pouring their concrete, if this base layer isn't absolutely perfect, nothing else in the workshop is going to be. So what do you put on the floor? You've got a couple of distinct paths here. Aaron Colton opted for Swiss track tiles. Why? Because standing on a hard concrete slab all day just wreaks havoc on your feet and knees. The softer tiles give you a bit of cushion while still looking incredibly sleek. On the flip side, if you're doing heavy fabrication or need extreme permanence, you might follow the Hunting for George route, bringing in a Kubota tractor, laying down compacted rock, and pouring a heavy-duty concrete slab. Now, let's talk about the walls. You're thinking standard drywall, right? Actually, scratch that. Drywall is just way too weak for a real shop. You want tactical, gritty materials. Using OSB panels or 12mm Yellow Tongue VJ150 chipboard is a massive upgrade. These materials are incredibly tough, they're slightly water-resistant, and most importantly, they give you the raw holding strength to sink a screw and hang a heavy tool absolutely anywhere. No more hunting for a stud or messing with those flimsy drywall anchors. Just remember to hit them with a heavy primer base coat so they don't literally soak up all your final paint. And a little creativity saves you from freezing in the winter. And this brilliantly illustrates a super clever, low-cost hack from Brett's Builds. He needed insulation, but he definitely didn't want to permanently lose his garage window. His solution? He built a custom removable OSB and foam insulation plug. It blocks out those harsh northeast winter drafts perfectly, but he can just pop it right out when the weather gets nice. Combined with standard fiberglass rolls between the studs, the whole space stays totally climate controlled. Section 3, clever power and laid-in. So, if you've ever tried to run a table saw and a shop vac at the exact same time and tripped a breaker, you know exactly how crucial it is to start your power plan from scratch. We are aiming to turn a dark, shadowy box into a brilliantly lit studio. But doing custom wiring for a dozen light fixtures can get incredibly expensive and super complicated. Luckily, there's a brilliant workaround that feels like a total cheat code. There are some incredibly smart, low-cost hacks here. Instead of hardwiring expensive fixtures, Brett grabbed these cheap light bulb socket adapters off Amazon that have USB ports built right in. He literally just plugged LED strips directly into these sockets. The result? He can flood his entire shop with bright light from a single standard wall switch. Incredible, right? And don't forget the tiny details. Add a dedicated exterior outlet right near the garage door for when you're working out on the driveway. And do what Aaron Colton did. Cut small relief notches in your baseboard trims so the thick power cords from your massive toolboxes can sit perfectly flush against the wall.
Section 4. Modular versus built-in storage.
All right, now we arrive at the most satisfying phase, but also the biggest debate every DIYer has to settle when outfitting their space. How are you actually going to store your gear? It usually comes down to permanent built-ins versus modular systems. Alex from XX Workshop built a massive custom French cleat wall and heavy MDF workbenches. It takes a ton of time up front for sure, but it is incredibly strong. However, if you want agile flexibility, you look at modular setups. Using wall control metal pegboards locked directly into 16-inch stud centers or heavy-duty racket gear systems means you can completely change your entire shop layout in a single afternoon if your needs change. But you want to know the ultimate secret weapon for shop layout? Put absolutely everything on casters. Heavy locking wheels give you immense flexibility. Whether you're wheeling Aaron Colton's massive 73-inch Icon toolbox across the room, or you just need to pull a cabinet away from the wall to grab a tiny piece of hardware you accidentally dropped behind it, casters are an absolute lifesaver. The sheer ingenuity of budget organization here is just incredible. You really don't have to spend a fortune to get organized. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how tactile these tricks are. Brett recycled old galvanized gas pipes pulled from his basement and turned them into heavy-duty woodworking clamps. The Hunting for George team utilizes these $2 magnetic hooks from eBay that stick fiercely to their metal shelves to hold all those quick-grab items. And if you're working in a tiny single-car garage like Alex, you look up. Mounting your clamps directly to the ceiling keeps them totally accessible but completely out of your valuable working space. Section 5. The final workshop setup. All that tearing down, painting, wiring, and organizing, it all leads to this exact moment. The satisfying transition where that empty, messy box has finally become a customized, dialed-in workshop. This quote perfectly captures the ultimate reward of this whole chronological transformation. Everything's got its place on the wall in a drawer, no excuses. When you group your sanding gear together, stash your glues in bulk, and have your drill batteries locked into a dedicated charging station, the friction of creating just disappears. You find what you need instantly, and those dreaded hour-long delays for a 5-minute job, completely gone. So, I'll leave you with this to think about as you evaluate your own space. What is the very first step you will take to reclaim your neglected garage? Is it finally tearing out that old clutter? Or maybe it's mapping out exactly where your new power outlets need to go. Whatever it is, I really hope this blueprint gives you the inspiration to pick up a hammer and start building the workspace you actually deserve. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and hey, happy building!